Let's give it up for Keller. He is a business consultant with Working Knowledge Incorporated. He works with businesses, schools, and individuals to help them make the best use of their human resources. And he's a veteran of the U.S. Navy and the father of two. Let's give him a big round of applause.
So the passion that I want to share with you guys tonight is my passion for speculative fiction. So we'll start with the obvious question, what on earth is speculative fiction? Speculative fiction is a type of fiction. It's a broad category of fiction, not a genre, but a broad category that encapsulates a whole bunch of different, really interesting genres that all focus on the question, what if? So, what if there are superpowered people that go around fighting evil? What if there are zombies? What if it's the end of the world? All of these kinds of questions that require you to imagine that something is possible. And then the whole story is built around that thing that you imagine. If you can buy into that thing, then you can buy into the story. So, for example, what if there are aliens? Or what if it's the end of the world? Or what if magic is real? Or what if time travel is possible? If you can buy into that sort of fantastical thing, then you can engage yourself in this really interesting story that tells just stories about a really broad variety of imaginative things. Now, you could read stories about the future. You could read stories about knights and dragons and magic and this stuff, superheroes, horror, zombies, all kinds of different stuff. And it's only bounded by what you can imagine. It's only limited by the human imagination. Now, I can trace my love for speculative fiction to a very specific moment in time. I'm in the 5th grade, reading a story out of my English textbook about a soldier fighting off an alien invasion. The soldier talks about how the aliens showed up. Everybody's excited. What will they teach us? What can they show us? But out of nowhere, the aliens attack. And now the soldier and his comrades are fighting back. And at the end of the story, the soldier says he sees one of these aliens coming toward him, takes careful aim and shoots it dead. And in the process, it cracks open the alien spacesuit to reveal the hideous creature within. A creature with only 2 arms, soft pink flesh, and no scales. And I went, whoa, that's us. We're the alien. Whoa. And this sort of moment of mind-bending imagination really made me fall in love, not just with science fiction in general, but just the whole category of speculative fiction. Because anything's possible. If you can imagine it, you can write a story about it. Anything. It could be anything you can come up with. The possibilities are infinite. And of course, we all start out our lives with that kind of imaginative capacity, with that kind of ability to create. We can pretend to be pirates or princesses or cops and robbers or G.I. Joe or the Little Mermaid or anything. When we're little kids, we know that all we have to do is take a bath towel and pin it around our necks and we're a superhero. You pick up a stick, you're a knight in shining armor. You put on a pair of black sweatpants, you're a ninja, right? You can do anything because you have an imagination, you have a creative capacity. Unfortunately, as we get older, I think we kind of get invested in the real world. And this is not bad per se, right? But we get invested in the concerns of the real world. Education and career and family and money making and putting away for the future. And the unfortunate side effect is that for many of us, maybe most of us, that blunts our imaginative capacity. It truncates our imaginative capability. And that's, I think, kind of unfortunate and why speculative fiction maybe is a niche genre. But I don't want that to be me. Now, I'm not one of those people who's confused around whether the Starship Enterprise is real. That's not me. I'm not one of those people. But I do want to retain the ability to imagine. I want to retain the ability to create, to stretch that imaginative capacity. I don't want my appropriate connection with the real world to limit me in that way. One of the things I really enjoy imagining is the future. Because if I'm really, really lucky, I'll only get to live about 60 more years into the future. But that doesn't stop me from wanting to think about it and imagine what it might be like, where our technology or knowledge or relationships might take us. Because that's really interesting to me. There's all kinds of possibilities for that. One possibility, of course, is the happy possibility, where the Star Trek possibility, where we overcome the things that divide us and cause conflict and sort of sally forth onto a utopian adventure in the stars. And I'm really attracted to that, but I'm not sure how likely that is. We've been at this for 10,000 years or more, and we haven't figured that out yet. So I'm also attracted to the kind of darker version of what the future might be like, the cyberpunk version, where the government has almost no power, and corporations have all the power, And what you can be and what you can do and what you can become is a function of how much money you have or your profit-making potential. I hope we don't get that future, but it's interesting, isn't it? What would life be like under those circumstances? What would relationships be like? What would our interpersonal stories be like in those environments? I'm fascinated by those kinds of things. Another kind of future that I like to imagine, although I don't want to live in it, is the future of the post-apocalypse, right? Where there's disease or war, whatever it is, the machinery of our civilization kind of grinds to a halt. What happens? What's the human reality in that situation? Do we pull together or do we pull apart? Do we help each other or do we hinder each other? What is life like after civilization? Now, the human condition question is, I think, fundamental to not just speculative fiction, but to all fiction. All great fiction tells human stories about what we as humans are about, what we as humans are engaging ourselves in. These are stories about love and loss and triumph and tragedy, despair, hope. These are stories of big things like good and evil, little things like interpersonal relationships between two people. It's not just speculative fiction that trades on human stories. It's really any fiction, all good fiction. And I think for speculative fiction in particular, the kinds of speculative fiction that break through to the mainstream, and there are examples, right, are the stories that do this human thing really well. And here's why. Because when you take a human story, you pull it out of its real-world environment, and you put it in this fantastical environment that speculative fiction can do, all of a sudden, you can see the human nature of those stories much more clearly. You can see what's human about those narratives in a way that gives you much more insight on the human condition than you'd normally be able to do. And so, of course, at the end of the day, what makes me passionate about speculative fiction is that I see people and humanity more clearly.